Hi everybody, Scott here, the Poor Prepper. Tonight I'm going to talk about environmentalism. I'm a libertarian, so I really don't buy into it. But for the sake of this discussion, I'm willing to work within the confines that the environmentalists have set up. This is going to be about a better fuel source for all of our vehicles here in America. Right now, oil is a good fuel source, but it does cause a lot of pollution, and also we cannot produce all of the fuel source we need here in America. We have to import an incredibly large amount of fuel. Canada and Mexico are the two biggest places we import oil from. Then you can go out to Venezuela, OPEC, all those places. The specific amounts we import from them, I don't know. Now, what am I talking about here? Instead of oil, we can do this in 3 steps. First, all laws requiring ethanol are gone. All of them. Toast, gone, history. So farmers, calm down. In step 3, you're going to earn your keep. Now, step 2. All new vehicles in America, all cars, all trucks, all the big rigs, buses, all that stuff have to be diesel. Now, all the big rigs, buses, stuff like that, they are diesel now. Some of this stuff is like garbage trucks. A lot of them are turning into liquid natural gas. Okay, fine. Leave them if you want. I don't care. But everything new has to be diesel. So, what do? The only exception to that are going to be motorcycles, scooters, lawnmowers, stuff like that. Now, step number 3, farmers, stop growing corn to turn into ethanol. You don't need to. Grow soybeans. Soybeans, you take the bunch of soybeans, put them in a machine, you squash them super flat, and that expels the oil from the bean. Then you turn that bean, you add some lye, some methanol, and you cook it, basically cook it. I'm not saying boil it at high temperatures, but basically cook it, and lo and behold, you got diesel. Now, soybean is going to be a natural substance we can grow all we want, which makes it renewable. As we grow the soybean plant, that plant is taking carbon out of the atmosphere. So when it's turned into diesel fuel, it's going to produce some carbon to go back into the atmosphere. I've looked on the internet. I've seen studies. I don't know if they're true or not. I'm not going to say they're true, but a lot of studies are saying that the amount of carbon produced by burning soybean oil, soybean-based diesel fuel, would not be as much as the carbon that is taken out of the atmosphere through the growing of soybeans. Now, different places have different numbers on how many soybeans it takes to create a gallon. I don't care. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a chemist. I don't care. This is actually something that's workable. Let's look at some side effects here. After 10 years, half the cars in America would be diesel. That means half the vehicles, not all the big rigs, I'm talking half of the privately owned vehicles in America would be diesel. That would cut down on the amount of carbon we put into the atmosphere tremendously. Now, I personally believe, and I have no proof, no way to back it up, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a chemist, I don't know, but I truly believe soybean-based diesel would burn much cleaner than oil-based diesel. That's an opinion. I have no way to back it up. It's just a gut feeling, instinct, whatever you want to call it. It's just what I just believe. And I honestly believe it to be true. Let's say soybean oil-based diesel burns, let's make a round number, 10% cleaner than oil-based. Well, after 10 years, half the cars are all diesel, which means we just reduced the amount of carbon we put into the atmosphere by 5% right there. Now imagine all the other vehicles, all the big rigs, the buses, the plane, well, not really planes, they run on kerosene, but the trains, that use diesel electric. Guess what? That's more carbon that we're not putting into the atmosphere. So, how much would that actually clean the atmosphere in 10 years? Well, in 2018, a study said that gasoline produced 1,099,000,000 metric tons of CO2. Diesel engines, that's all the big rigs and stuff, and a very few trucks and cars, produced 41 million metric tons of CO2. Now, that's why I'm talking all new vehicles have to be diesel. After 20 years, the only gasoline-powered vehicles in America are going to be motorcycles, scooters, and classic cars. At that point, how much would we actually be able to reduce our carbon footprint? At 20 years, I would estimate somewhere between 150 million metric tons right there. And that's just not trying to, build scrubbers and stuff. That's just going to a new type of fuel. 150 million metric tons. Now, our farmers can grow soybeans. We pay our farmers not to grow. Instead of paying them not to grow, tell them, grow soybeans. Because guess what? The government is mandating that all diesel is going to have to be, by such and such a date, is going to have to be soybean based. Now, this is not something where you can go, hey, it's 2020, so in 2022, all diesel has to be soybean. It's going to have to be phased in, probably over 5 years, because the companies that are going to make this diesel have to actually build facilities, ramp up production. Current refineries would have to, retool. Like car companies would have to retool to make diesel engines. Now, figure within 5 years we could be all biodiesel, all soybean-based diesel. At that point, if we're making our own diesel, guess what? And farmers are just growing soybeans, hand over fist. What if we're only paying $1.50 a gallon for diesel fuel? I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty good. I'd love to get down to $1.50 for a gallon of fuel. I'd love to. Now, when you grow soy, another side effect here, we're just talking side effects. Now, a side effect, when you grow a soybean plant, it returns vital nutrients into the soil. What specific nutrients? I don't know. I'm not a farmer, and unlike some politicians, farmers actually have to pay attention to that, and a lot of farmers are college grads. Wow. Now, what that's going to ultimately make our farmland much more fertile. So one year we could grow soybeans in this field. Next year, hey, we can grow corn and we don't have to use as much fertilizer. Cool. Now, another side effect here. When you take soybeans, let's say this is a pile of soybeans. Let's say this is 100 pounds of soybeans. Put it into a machine, you squash them flat, the oil is expelled out. What do you got left? You have a high protein mash that's organic. There are no preservatives, there are no additives, there are no steroids in it. You know what? Sell it as poultry food. Sell it as swine food. Let the pigs and chickens get good, clean nourishment without all that byproducts in it. Next, diesel engines. I want to be careful here because I'm not an expert in this, but I have read diesel engines produce more power than a gasoline engine. And you don't use spark plugs in that, you use compression to basically make an explosion, and that's how it runs. That's a very simplistic way of saying it, but it's going to produce more power, which means you don't have to have all the spark plugs. You don't have to have all these extra car parts, and making all those car parts is a big, polluting device. How much carbon goes into the atmosphere for that? So you're going to be producing less carbon, making less car parts, but also diesel engines, as I just said, they produce more power, so you may not need as much fuel to move a car down the road. Now, an 18-wheeler, you might use a little more diesel than a oil-based diesel. Okay, fine. It might be a wash. We end up using the same amount in the long run when you count in the 18-wheeler versus the car. Okay, but what if the cars end up using less diesel because it produces more power, and they can go farther easier on less fuel, less carbon. Now, another side effect, and this is a what if type thing. Right now, when you buy a barrel of oil, it's at the open market price. You could buy it anywhere. Buy it in Alaska. Buy it at the South Pole. I have no idea if they pull oil out of there. I don't know. I'm just naming a place at random. But no matter where you on earth you pull that oil out of the ground, it's sold at the open market price. Now let's say Iran were to close the Straits of Hormuz. They got the Sulfur missiles. They could blow a few ships out of the water and create quite a scare. Overnight, oil could very well go to $400 or $500 a barrel. That means oil pulled out of the ground in Montana is $400 or $500 a barrel. So America is not energy efficient right now. We are energy dependent. We are tied to the price of oil. We are tied to it. It's like an anchor, and if that anchor gets pushed into the ocean, we are going to sink and drown we're going to sink and drown because we are tied to that anchor. If we go to soybean oil diesel, we're no longer tied to any anchor. If oil goes up to $500 a barrel, what do we care? We're still paying, after 20 years, we're still paying $1.50, $2, whatever the price is going to be for our soybean-based diesel. We're safe. The Persian Gulf, not going to be our problem anymore after that. We don't have to send troops over there. We don't have to send military assets over there anymore. Unless they pay us very well for it. Now, one other what if. What if oil were to hit peak oil? Now, what is peak oil? That's where oil rigs all over the world, not just in one spot, but all over the world, they're no longer producing as much oil as they used to. And, every week, month, year, it produces less and less. That means it's almost out of oil, and pretty soon it's going to be out of oil. At that point, let's say there's no oil left. What is going to happen? America is going to switch to soybean-based diesel. And if we're already switched over to that, we're fine. We're safe. We're cool. Rest of the world, not our problem. If we want to help them, fine. But it's not our problem. Now, peak oil, there's no guarantee. Nobody really truly knows how much oil we have. Nobody knows how long it's going to last. Nobody. They make estimates, but nobody knows. Oh well, I really don't care. If we were to go to this within 20 years, we would be energy independent. We would be independent of every bad part of the planet. So ladies and gentlemen, kick the tires on this one. See how it looks. See how it feels to you. Talk to your politicians. Talk to your friends. All of you in the green movement. Think about it. Why would this not work? Because a lot of greenies are going, electricity, electricity, electricity. Every car has to be electric powered. That's great. How are you going to generate the electricity? If every car, every truck, every train in America were electrical powered right now, we would not be able to generate enough electricity to power all those vehicles and keep our TVs on. We wouldn't be able to keep our phones charged. So, electricity's fine, but how are you going to generate said electricity? So people, give this some thought. Maybe somebody who's politically connected or wealthier than I am can actually kick these tires and get the ball rolling. So you guys have a good night and enjoy yourself. If you have any questions, it's poorprepper13@gmail.com. Have a good night, people.